As Muse spans 5 decades, beginning in 1947.
It's a trip down memory lane to start with, but I also think it's a recognition, for how much the models have changed the course of fashion and influenced popular culture. And I think this exhibition will bring back their influence and their place in fashion history.
In almost every period, there are hundreds and hundreds of beautiful professional beauties, and we don't know who they are. But a handful come to be memorable celebrities and the embodiment of fashion at that moment.
Today, there are Giselle and Kate Moss cast as supermodels, but more than 50 years ago, there was a model named Dovima. She struck a pose that's as dazzling now as it was back then.
Dovima and the Elephants is perhaps the most popularly remembered image of high fashion in the period. In the 1950s, the prevailing aesthetic was for a very sophisticated, urbane, soignée identity. A woman of more maturity. By the 1960s, however, it's about a jubilance, a youthfulness, motion, a gangly adolescent excitement that comes into play.
It's fantastic. I haven't seen that dress for 42 years since I wore it.
I think the model that transformed contemporary culture the most was Twiggy. Twiggy in the 1960s was a complete repudiation of the prevailing aesthetic. The 1970s is post-feminist, and there's an introduction of women who have powerful builds, aerobicized, they all look like swimmers, they all can fend for themselves. The 1980s and 90s, however, takes the perfection of those bodies from the 1980s and adds to it faces that are very distinctive and ethnically diverse. With the 1990s is, of course, the emergence of alternative beauty, and the avatar of that is Kate Moss, someone who comes to represent an almost anti-fashion, fashion aesthetic.
But what about the decade we're living in? We'll just have to wait and see. In the meantime, Vogue's Anna Wintour says visitors will not only be highly entertained, they just might gain a new perspective.
Maybe they will understand more clearly that fashion does not just exist in a vacuum in the head of some insane designer. We do reflect the time, and people from all over the world coming to this exhibition will now understand that.